Yeah, today we're going to do some live coding, like
Cool.
show you how to actually make it from scratch, like from zero to working MRE.
Great. Thank you very much for doing it.
To the event, today we're going to show you how to make this MRE from scratch. It's a cigar and an ashtray. It's fully customizable. You can change it to your own cigar and smoke effect.
Oh, wow.
Nice. Yeah, if you want to change the type of the cigar, just click on the ashtray again. And, change it.
Hey everyone, what's up?
That's cool.
Did someone say free cigars?
Let me get a good shot of it. Let me see it.
And you can also put out the cigar in the ashtray.
My cousin
Put the
owns it.
cigar in the ashtray, it will remove it from your hand.
Hey, Jackie, can you
Yes.
demonstrate putting the cigar out? It's over here at
How do I do it?
over here at the ashtray. Let's see it.
Okay,
Let's
just
see you put
dip
it
it
out.
in there.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
And then it just disappears. Cool.
yeah,
Okay.
cool.
And there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll wait for everyone else for another 3 minutes, then we'll start. Yeah, while we're waiting, I can
Hey,
can show you the Unity files.
hey, Jackie, can you also demonstrate changing it to a cigarette for me?
Okay, what I gotta do? Just grab it again.
How do we change it
And then
to
click on the.
How do you change it to a cigarette, Lumi?
You
Oh,
just
to change
click
it to
on.
cigarette,
You click
there
on
it
the
is.
ashtray.
Yeah, click on
Yeah.
it again. Change it.
Ooh,
Okay.
wow, that's crazy.
It's all going to be open source, so you can go to this
Ooh.
website, go to GitHub, and go to this link, and get the cigars. Go to cigars, and you can like fork this repository, or you can you can either fork it or download the source code. And the Unity file is also included. So if you want to, take a look at how the cigar 3D model and the particle works, just click on this file and download it as a Unity package. Then in Unity editor, you just go to Assets, Import Package, System Package, and navigate to the Unity package you just downloaded. And you can import all the example objects. Yeah, and special thanks to Maximus. He modeled and textured all the 3D models. So please, consider supporting him by joining his Patreon as well as his Discord server. This is Maximus. Yeah, so without further ado, let's get on with our event. Yeah, so welcome everyone. So today we're going to cover how to do the cigar MRE from scratch, from absolute scratch in under 45 minutes. So first, a little disclaimer. This is not a class. It's only like experience sharing because I'm not a professional developer nor a developer for the SDK. I'm only a user. And this event is sponsored by the Free MRE Foundation. The free, as in free freedom, not free beer. So I'm not really against charging for MRE. It's only against unreasonable prices. Like you should not pay for MREs that's not highly customizable and takes hours to make. That's what the Free MRE Foundation is striving for. And oh, sorry, I might need to ask Kurt to, yeah, maybe come over here because you're, Rich is recording. Thanks. Yeah, so today's content will be divided into 3 parts. So first, we're going to use 10 minutes to make a kit in Unity, and then we're gonna make the MRE in 30 minutes. Then we're gonna show you how to add your own cigars. So, so first, I'm gonna show you how to do the smoke particles. Here, I have the Unity editor opened. So in order to show the final result, I'll drag the already created prefab into the scene and select the model. You can see the particle is playing. And we want to create this curvy smoke effect. So how do we do that? So first we create an empty object as the root, right, and name it curvy smoke, and place it at the center of the scene. Let me hide the sample first. And then we create a cube as the mesh, because sometimes if you don't include a mesh, will confuse the word editor of Altspace, and it will scale the object to infinity, and it will cause all the colliders to stop working, and it will fall through the ground. So it's best to include like a very tiny cube. I'll just size it like 10,000 and remove the collider. Okay, once we've created a mesh, it's time to create the actual particle itself. Right, just create an empty object and add component, the particle system component. And once I've added the component, you can see there's just a bunch of pink squares. It's pink because we haven't assigned any material to the particle yet, so that it won't render. It's just pink means error in Unity. So the first thing we're going to do is to go to the renderers, and first of all, we want a smoke. So in this case, we'll use mesh as our render mode. And you can see the meshes already changed to cubes, right? So there are a bunch of pink cubes floating around. And next, we want to assign a different mesh other than the cube. So here we have like this mesh in the shape of a crescent, and it's suitable for our smokes. But you can see it's still pink, right? So if we want to make it, look like smoke, we need to give it a material. Here I already have a material already created. It's called ring. So basically the ring, so this is what the ring looks like, right? It's just a simple image. But it's applied to this crescent-shaped mesh, so it looks like a curved smoke. Yeah, I can see the particles are already taking shape, but it's not really what we wanted, because it looks it's like emitted like randomly from a broader range. We want to confine it to smaller shape, so we go to shapes, and as you can see, the cone is really wide. We want to confine it to only, say, 0.02 meters. Right? And we also want to change the angle to like 10. As you can see, the smoke should be facing up, so we're also going to change the rotation, rotate it by 90 degrees so it faces up. And now we have the particles facing up. But as you can see, it's not random. The rotation of the particles are same, so we want to randomize it. So in order to do that, we go to the general properties and click, check this 3D start rotation, and click this drop down and select random between two constants, and change the range to 0 to 360. And now you can see the generated particles are randomized. Right, it's already looking like, but it's kind of fast, right? Emitting at a faster speed. So to do that, we just simply lower the speed. Right? But it's like too low, so we'll utilize the gravity. Give it acceleration to make it move upward. Right, since it's smoke, it's lighter than air, so it will, rise up. So the last step we want to do is to give it a little bit of alpha change. So the longer the particle exists, the more transparent it becomes. Just like in real life, the smoke dissipates, right? So in order to do that, we'll check the color over lifetime and click the color selector and gradient editor, right? In the gradient editor, so the top bars are for alpha values. So we just select the end bar and drag the alpha all the way to 0. Let me drag it, let me move it over here so I can see it change in real time. So if I set it to 255, and you can see that it stays a constant like transparency, right? But if I select this and drag it to 0, you can see it's fades, right? Fades over time. That's the effect we want to achieve. And we also want to change the lifetime to a shorter value, like 2 seconds. And that's almost what we want to achieve. So the last step is to, change the size over lifetime. So to do that, we click this checkbox. You can see at first it's small, then as time goes by, it becomes very big. You can also customize how it, how the size changes. Yeah. So basically, this is how we make the smoke particles. Yeah. So the next step, once we have all the kits ready, it's time to code the MRE from scratch. So before we code anything, we need to like a general design. So this MRE is really easy. It's just 2 components, an ashtray and a cigar. And in order for the cigar to spawn, you click on the ashtray. And if you already have a cigar, then you will change it to the next cigar, to a cigarette or to a smoke pipe. And if you don't have a cigar in your hand already, then you will spawn a new cigar in your hand. And in order to put out the cigar, you just simply put the cigar into the trigger. And when it detects the trigger enter event, it will put out the cigar. And the cigar component is the object you're holding in your hand, and when it enters your mouth, it inhales. You inhale, and when it exits, it exhales. That's basically how the MRE should work. And here are some data structures and class designs, but we'll show it in the actual coding process. So the next 30 minutes, we're going to code it from scratch, right? So here we have here we have the server I purchased from this website. I mean, I'm not affiliated with that website. It's called Server Cheap, but it's like most widely used by most of our MRE developers. So this is the one I bought. It's like $3 a month. So here I have it. I have VS Code open already, and I used the remote connection plugin to connect to the server. So right now I'm in the server. You can see I'm connected to the terminal. So without further ado, let's get on to making the MREs. So in order to make an MRE, an empty framework from scratch, I've made a script. So all you need to do is to go to this link. Right? So I already have the Git installed, so I'll just clone this repository. And this command will basically pull all the code from GitHub and download it to a local directory called create MRE. So you can see it's already downloaded. It's called create MRE, right? So the next step, I'll change directory to that directory. And you can see there is a run script. So basically how it works is you use the run script and pass the destination directory. I'll just use the test under my home directory. Right. That way it will start to begin the setup process. And after the script has finished, you'll be able to find the test in your home directory. And it's an empty MRE, and you can start working from there without having to manually set up every time. Yeah, it's just going to take another few seconds. Yeah, so basically what it's doing is, let's check out the content of the file. So basically it installs TypeScript and, generates necessary files and installs the MRE, then sets up the scripts to run and build the MRE. And it's already finished, right? So we just exit out of this directory, and we can see we already have this MRE framework generated, right? So we can work from here. So in order to start coding, we go to the Explorer, open folder, and there's a test, right? Just navigate to the directory and click OK. And you can see the file structure of this folder. It's basically source. So just two TypeScript files. And it's an empty framework. So before we code anything, we need to make like a plan, right? A to-do list. So I'll create a to-do list, and the first step is to spawn a cigar. That's the first task. And the second task is to spawn a cube that will act as a trigger in the future, and spawn attach the trigger to cigar. And last step will be implement smoking. And it'll be divided into two sub steps, right? The first is implement trigger events. The second step is implement inhale and exhale. That's what we're going to do today in the live coding session. So, and the first step is spawn a cigar, right? In order to do that, we need to use the MRE SDK, of course, and can use this API called create from library. So basically what this does is it spawns a kit object. And you can see when you hover your cursor over the function, you can see the definitions of this API call, right? The first parameter is you pass the context to the function. And the second one is the options. It's all the necessary information you need to create a kit object. So I'll just pass the context as first parameter, and the second parameter is It needs a resource ID. So basically, what a resource ID is an 18-digit ID identifier for each individual kit objects, right? So in our case, I've already uploaded the kit we'll be using to my account. So can go to the kit page, and the last column, that says artifact ID. I'll just find the cigar and copy the artifact ID of the cigar and paste it in this resource ID. Right. And the second information we need is, where to spawn the cigar, right? So we'll just spawn at 0, 0, 0. And you don't have to memorize all this. Like the VS Code will automatically complement the code. If you like, the hint will automatically give you what to type. Yep, that's the first task, and we can start testing. So we just change directory to test, and there's a handy script command that's called watch. Basically, it builds, so it watches the changes in the files, and if you save the file and detects a change, it will rebuild, like an incremental rebuild, and restart the MRE process. So I'll just run npm run watch. Right, it will start. Oh, wait a minute. I forgot a step. It's to install the node modules. Because that's the first step you need to do. Yeah, after you've done that, run and npm run watch. Whoops. There's one error. Oh, yeah, it's usually it forgot to. Yep, there we go. And so the transforms are there are two types of transform, right? The local transform and the world transform. So you can't just directly pass the position. You need to wrap it with a local. Whoops, another one error. This one. Oh, 0 error. Okay. Yeah, you can see I've spawned the MRE over here, like right over here. You can see the cigar is already spawned. Yep, that's our first task done. I'll just cross it, and we'll proceed to the next one, which is to spawn a cube. So in order to spawn a cube, we'll use a different function called API called create, and we pass the context to the API, and so instead of spawning a kit object using the kit ID, we need to actually tell Altspace to first create a mesh. And in order to do that, we need like an asset manager, because a mesh is an asset as well as materials. So in order to do that, we need to first define a member called assets and its type of asset container. Then we initialize it as a new asset container and pass the context to the asset container. Right, now that we have the asset container, we can proceed to creating the mesh. So to create the mesh, we pass the mesh ID to the definition of the actor, right? So in order to create the mesh, we use the create box mesh method, and if you hover your mouse cursor over the function, you can see the definition, right? So the first is the first parameter is name, and the rest of them are the dimensions, width, height, and depth, right? So I'll just give it a name called box, and just give the 0.1 meters, that's its dimensions, and get its ID and pass it to the definition. And the next, we need to tell the AltspaceVR is the material we need to apply to the mesh. So in our case, it's going to be a trigger, so we want it to be invisible. So we'll need to create a transparent material. So we'll use the assets to create a material and give it a name called invisible. And so the material will take two properties. The first one is the color, right? We'll want to give it a transparent color. So just the color 4 and from color 3. And we'll use a predefined red color. And here's what's important is the alpha value. So we want it to be transparent. So we want to set it to 0. But for our purpose, we want to first visualize it, before we settle down the dimensions, because we want to debug it. So in our case, we'll set it to 0.1. But after we've finished everything, we can set it back to 0. And the next parameter is the alpha mode. So if we don't set the alpha mode to blend, it will not, the alpha value will not take effect because it assumes it's a opaque material. So if it's set it to blend, then it will be transparent. Yeah, that's the first property we need to tell the MRE, to spawn a cube. And the next we need to do is to tell it where to spawn the cube. We'll just copy the code from the cigar transform and place it at 0, 0, 0. And since we want the trigger to be a child of the cigar, right, we also need to use the reparenting feature and designate the cigar as the parent of this. Oh, sorry. Yeah, designate the cigar as the parent of the trigger. Right? Just set the parent ID to cigar.id. Yeah. And if I save this change, the MRE will automatically rebuild, and you can see the result afterwards. Yeah, you can see there's a red cube on top of the cigar. I've spawned it over here so you can see the result. So that's our, that's our second step. And the third step is to attach the trigger. Oh, I've already done that. Yeah, so the next thing we're gonna implement, actually implement smoking. But before we implement smoking, we forgot one thing, which is to attach a trigger to user as mouth, right? That's what we need to do before implementing smoking. So, in order to do that, we need to keep track of all the mouthpieces attached to each user. So what we want to do is to use a map to keep track of all the mouthpieces we spawned. And the map will use the user ID as the key, and actor, the mouthpiece as value. And since it's multiple, it's a plural, and we initialize the map. who've initialized it. So in order to attach a mouthpiece to each user, we need to do it when the user first joins the world. So we do it in this callback function. It's called user joined. And so basically what we want to do is to, copy this trigger, because, the trigger we just created, and paste it into the user created, user joined, and call it mouth. Because the mouth is the same as the trigger, which is basically a cube with a collider and rigid body. So I'll remove the parent because it doesn't have any parent, but add the attachment property because you're gonna want to attach it to the user's mouth, right? And the user attachment, it takes first you need to tell it who to attach to and where to attach to, right? Attach point. And since it's you can see it automatically hints, like, tells you the available attach point. I'll choose head, right? It will attach to the head. And the head is the head attach point is actually inside your head, right? You need to bring it forward a little bit. So you need to change the position. So here I'll just stop. I'll just go to the finished MRE and copy the value from here. This value you need, and paste it in here, format it. And yeah, I also need to change the dimensions because 0.1 is a little bit too big. So change it to 0.8. Right, okay. That's the mouthpiece we created when the new user joined. And in order to, we need to keep track of the mouth because when a user leaves, we need to also remove that mouth, right? So when the user joins, if the mouth hasn't been created, then it's already been created, then we simply, do nothing, right? And only if it's not created, we create it and save it to this map. So we set and mouth. That's this step finished. Right? Add the trigger to user as a mouth. Now that if I save it, oh wait, so it's best practice to clean up the garbage, right? It's so once a user leaves, you don't want the mouthpiece to stay in the world, right? So we need to do a proper clean. So, when he leaves, we get the mouthpiece and destroy the mouthpiece. Yeah, you can see there's a mouthpiece attached to your avatar. Everyone has a mouthpiece. Yeah, this mouthpiece will use it for detecting the trigger enter indent for the cigar. Right. Okay. Now let's proceed to the next step, which is implement trigger indents. So. In order to trigger, so in order to implement trigger indents, we need to first of all give each cube a trigger component. So to do that, we pass the collider to the trigger definition to the actor, and we tell it, what type of collider you want to spawn. So in our case, it's a box, so the box collider. And we'll also need to tell it which layer the collider should be. So in our case, it's an attachment, and we don't want it to, the collider to push our avatar. So we'll set the collider collision layer to hologram. Yeah, because a hologram won't push you unless you're in like environmental clipping. And here's what's important, right? We need to since it's attached to the cigar, and we want to it to be able to trigger the trigger enter event, we need to give it a rigid body, because if we don't, then it simply won't trigger the event, because that's how the MRE works. You need at least one rigid body. So just, here we'll just spawn a static on no gravity and rigid body, and in this case we can trigger the event. And we'll do the same to the mouthpiece. So yeah, the mouthpiece. Oh, and there's one thing I forgot is to tell the MRE is a trigger instead of like an ordinary cube, right? Just set its trigger to true. That way it'll tell it it's a trigger. And we'll also assign the collider to the mouthpiece. So, and it's on the same layer. So in theory, when the mouth enters the trigger on the cigar, you should be able to trigger the trigger enter event. So the next step will be to implement the trigger event. So to do that, we'll use the collider on trigger, this API call to bind a handler to the event. It's called trigger enter event. And this handler takes the actor that enters the trigger as the parameter. And since we want only the mouth to trigger the event, we want to add a condition. It's called actor name. Only if the name is mouth, we trigger the event. Otherwise, we simply do nothing. Right? And we'll handle the event in the separate function inhale. And we'll do the same, similar with exhale, except the event is trigger exit, and the name is called exhale. Yeah, so basically we've implemented the trigger events, right? Next is to implement both inhale and exhale. But before we do that, I forgot one thing, which is to attach cigar to user. Because right now the cigar is only a separate cigar. It's not attached to anyone. So in order to do that, we don't want to do it in this function call, right? We want to copy the content of what we've written and define a new function called create cigar and pass the user as its parameter. And we want to do is to attach the cigar to the user. So we'll find the attachment we've used before and change the attach point to right hand or left hand, depending on your own preference. And we need to change the position and the rotation of it, because it's not usually at 0, 0. Right, so what we need to do is to find parameters I've already figured out. So it's this one, position. Just copy, paste. And for the rotation to work, it's a little bit more tricky because MRE uses a thing called quaternion, which is different from what it usually use, which is Euler angles. So in order to translate, these values to what MREs can understand, first of all, we need to use a functional call called quaternion from Euler angles. And the value we passed is the XYZ. That's what we use in Unity, right? But there's another catch. So the value is actually in radian. It's a different unit. We need to convert it to degrees. So, wait. Yeah, so in order to, rotate it by 90 degrees, we can't just put -90 here because that's not going to work. It's not degrees, right? We need to multiply it by degree to radians to convert it to the radian value that MRE can understand. Yeah, now that it's well positioned and attached, it's time to call this function when the user enters, right? So user joined, and we create a mouthpiece. Now we also need to keep track of the cigars we created. So it's similar to the mouthpieces. Instead of mouth, we name it cigars. Initialize it. Yeah, then we can proceed to keep track of the cigars. So if the cigar hasn't been created, then we create it. Right? If it's already created, then we simply do nothing. Right? And same thing we'll do in here. So we just create a new function called create mouth, right? Create mouth. And pass the user as the parameter. Oops. So if it's already created, then we do nothing, right? Yep, that's how we create a cigar and a mouth. Then when the user enters, we simply call these two functions, right? Create mouth user and create cigar user. Yeah, then we'll have two items attached to our mouth. Right, it's time for a test, so I'll just save the file and let the watcher automatically build it and reset it. Yeah, I think you should be able to see the cigar attached. It's not the correct position. Yeah, we'll figure that out later. Yeah, it's just a matter of trial and error to get the numbers correct, right? So this step we finished. So the next last two steps is to implement both inhale and exhale. So to implement the inhale, we need to first think what inhale does, right? It's basically when you put the cigar in your mouth and it plays a sound, basically what it does, right? So in our kit object, we can see there's an item called inhale. So it's basically just an audio source with the inhale sound attached. And we can find it in our kit list. It's called inhale. Right? Just copy this artifact ID and spawn this when someone inhales. Right? So you can just copy the code we use to spawn a kit object and paste it. Right? Copy. And paste it into this function and replace the artifact ID. And since we don't need to move it, it can, ignore the transforms. We also need to specify a user it attaches to, so pass the function, pass the parameter. And yeah, there we have it. And since we don't want the actor to stay like in there forever, because it's like only a short audio clip, right? We need to destroy it after a certain time. So we use the set timeout function, and when destroy the actor, and after say 3 seconds, it uses milliseconds, so we need to multiply it by 1,000. Let's inhale, and we also need to pass the user to the inhale. That's the inhale we've implemented. And the last job is to do the exhale, right? So what happens when you exhale? It's similar to inhale. It's the same concept. So you can just copy all the content in here. So when you exhale, instead of spawning a sound effect, it spawns a smoke effect, right? So I'll just replace this with smoke here. And the attach point is going to be like head. And we also need to adjust the position of the smoke. Paste the position. And there's a trick to get all the parameters you need, right? So if I want to figure out where should I attach how far should I move the cube, the trigger, you can simply do it in the Unity editor, which is create a cube. And set it as the child of the cigar, and we want it to be at the end of the cigar. Right? So the number you get from inspector is the number you need in the MRE. Right? I just changed the position of the trigger to that value. That's the last thing we need to fix is the positioning of the cigar, and once we fix that, I think we'll have it finished. That's basically how to do the most simple cigar. But since we only have 45 minutes, we don't have all the time to get into all the functionalities like the ashtray. But the source code is on GitHub, available for everyone to download, so you don't really need to do it actually from scratch, right? So we can simply so that will be the next part, which is how to add your own cigars. So the last 30 minutes we talk about how to make an MRE, like cigar MRE, from absolute scratch, right? But we don't need to, because we already have the source code for already working cigar, which is so we just use git clone this MRE and change the directory to the cigars. And first we need to run the install command, to install all the dependencies, because Git doesn't come with all the dependencies. And after it's finished installing, you can manually run the build if there's any errors. Um, yep, no errors. Okay. I'll just close this one and run this one. So you can specify the port, like by default is 3901, but you can change it to any port you want. Start. Yep. You can have it up and running in less than 5 minutes. Oops. Battery is slow. Let me plug in. Okay. Yeah, here you should be able to see the MRE. Right, this is the MRE I just started. It works the same as this one. So all you need to do is to clone the Git repository and run the command and run npm start, and you just spawn an MRE. It will work, right? So next we still have 10 minutes left, so we'll be showing you how to add your own cigars. So it's basically like the helmet app, right? So to add a helmet, you edit the content pack, and for the cigars, you added something similar called a config file, right? It's basically a JSON file. So it's located in the public folder, and it's called cigars. And here's the content of that file. So here we have a cigar and we have a cigarette. And I will take the cigar as example. Right? First, we need is the name of the cigar and the attach point of the cigar. Right? So if I say set the attach point to left hand and I click save, it should be able to go to the left hand. Let's give it a try. But first, we need to tell the MRE, to refer to that config file. So let me get the IP address. That's this IP address. So usually when we spawn an MRE, right, it's ws :/ and 3901. In order for us to tell the MRE to use this config file, I'll pass a query parameter to the MRE. It's called URL. I need to add a question mark, and URL equals the HTTP, the 3901 and cigars.json. Yeah, that's the URL we need to replace this with your own content pack or JSON file, and Cigar will just replace this one with
Just in case I disappear, are you going to be sending us this information at the end? Because my weather is really bad over here.
yeah, no problem. Cigars.
Thank you so much, Lenny. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
The whole part of
Oops,
living in
it's-
Florida, I guess.
Missed it.
Cigars.
I thought it was a.
Say again.
Yep, now it should work. So if you pick up the cigar, it's on your left hand instead of your right hand.
That works.
So that's how you make your own cigar. There's not only attach point you can modify, you can also change the kit object, right? You can make your own 3D
Look
model
on my pinky.
and
Yeah.
just replace it with your own resource ID. But you need to most likely change the position and rotation of the object, because not all cigars, not all smoke stays the same position. Right? And this model here is for placing the cigar on the ashtray. So yeah, this position and rotation is for the ashtray transformation, and the smoke is for the exhale. No, it's not exhale. It's for the smoke coming from the cigarette, right? The curvy smoke we just did, and the inhale is the sound effect. The exhale is the smoke when you smoke the cigar and smoke coming out of your mouth. And the last part is the trigger, right? So the trigger is located at should be located at the end of the cigar, right? Like that's near your mouth, right? So that when you put it near your mouth, it will trigger the event. Oh, and there's one more, is the tip. So in this MRE, it not only has the trigger to detect the smoking action, it also has a trigger to detect the put out. When you put out the cigar, you put it in the ashtray, right? The tip is for the putting out the ashtray. Yeah, that's basically how you make your own cigar, right? Just simply copy this one and paste it as a new element and start modifying it. And don't forget to give it a unique name, like cigar number 2. Yeah, then you will have 3 cigars. So basically, this is how it works.
That's cool. Like a 3D model, add my own, and change the artifact ID.
Yeah, and, it's released under the MIT license, so you can, have the freedom to modify, to close source it if you want, sell it. It's commercial, however you want it. Yeah. And I'll make the repository public and send everyone the link.
Nice one. I think I'll be doing that soon.